I saw a disturbing poll recently. It's a poll done by the Gallup organization, and the question was, is it very important that couples who have children together legally marry? Is it very important that couples who have children together legally marry? And the reason it disturbed me is that only 29% of men and 28% of women answered yes to that. In other words, somewhere around 30% of American men and women believe that it's important for couples with children together to be married. The rest don't. That's down significantly from the year 2006, the last time that was done. 53% of men and 45% of women agreed that it's very important for couples with children together to be married. And if you stop and think about that, that's shocking. Even when you break it down across the political spectrum, it's surprising. I would have thought that conservatives would overwhelmingly say that men and women who have children together should be married, but actually they don't. Only 41% of conservatives believe that men and women who have children together should be married. For those who describe themselves as either moderate or liberal, it's around 22%. So it's less than half as many moderates and liberals think that men and women with children together should be married than conservatives, but still, even half of conservatives don't believe that. Now, there are other interesting insights about that poll. It's split pretty much evenly by race, but non-whites will agree to a certain extent more. A few more percentage points, non-whites will agree that men and women with children together should be married than whites. Fewer college-educated adults believe it's important for parents to be married. And in general, older age groups are more likely to say it's important for parents to be married. However, the surprising thing is that in the 55-plus age group, only 38% of them believe that it's very important that parents be married. So no matter how you slice it, whether you slice it liberal, conservative, young, old, white, non-white, male or female, college or non-college, you can't get a majority of Americans in any of those categories to agree that a man and woman who has children together should be married. And now this is what shocked me the most. Among American adults who say they attend church at least weekly, only 45% believe it's very important for a man and woman with children to be married. 45%, it's not even half. Among adults who said they went to church at least monthly, only 32% agree. And so even among people who are nominally Christian, you can't get a majority to agree that parents should be married. 15 years ago, in 2006, over 2/3 of Christians would agree with that. Today, it's less than half. And that really shocked me. And I tell you, it made me think, okay, I have been a failure in my job. Now, you think if you were a doctor or something, every patient that came to you died. And how would you think, would you think you were a very effective doctor? And so I think that somehow or another, those of us who are Christian ministers have failed. And then I started thinking, well, among most of the mainline Christian ministers I know, they probably wouldn't agree with it either. So there's the problem, probably. But people don't merely express that belief in polls, they live it. 40% of all births in the United States are with unwed mothers. 40%. Less than 40% of all children in the United States live with their two biological parents, somewhere around a third. The United States has the world's highest rate of children living in single-parent homes. We are #1 in the world for children living in single-parent homes. In 1970, over 40% of the households in the United States consisted of married parents with children. Today, only 18% of households consist of married parents with children. That percentage was cut in over half in 50 years. Now, I found these statistics surprising, and frankly, they can really be depressing. Now, I realize people have always gotten pregnant before they got married. That's not a product of the modern world. I realize parents have always gotten divorced. My own mother's parents were divorced, and they divorced when she was in junior high school. And she said she was the only girl she knew in junior high school whose parents were divorced, and it was a terrible embarrassment to her, and she took that embarrassment to the grave. Now, I realize that's always happened, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is not the fact that things like that have always happened. What I'm talking about is the attitude that the traditional family, as we've always known it, is unimportant. That's the problem. In the past, two teenagers or two 20-somethings were dating and accidental pregnancy occurred. That happened. Yes, in the past, married couples with children divorced. But I think in the past, things like that were not considered to be the ideal. Things like that were looked upon as something that, while it sometimes happened, was things to be best avoided. But today, no one gives it a second thought, because so few people believe that it's important for a child to be raised in a home where their two biological parents are and where they're married. That's the problem. So now I want us to look at some other statistics. We're going to look at three categories of children. The first category is children who live in a home with their biological parents who are married. The second category of children is children who live in a home where either their mother or father is married to someone else. That's a step-parent family. And the third category is children living in a single-parent home. For black children, the poverty rate for a child living in a step-parent home is double that of a child living in a home where both parents are there and they're married. For a black child living in a single-parent home, the poverty rate is 3 times that of a black child living in a home where both parents are there and are married. For white children, surprisingly enough, the difference is even more pronounced. The child poverty rate for a white child in a family that has a step-parent is twice as high as a child living in a household with the both married parents. But for a white child living in a single-parent home, the child poverty rate is over 6 times that of a white child living in a home with both parents married. That's double the difference of a black child. Looking at other areas for both black and white children, a child in a family where both biological parents are married is much more likely to graduate from college than either a child in a step-parent family or a single-parent family. The rate of incarceration among children living in a single-family home is way higher than the rate of incarceration for children living in a home with both biological parents. In fact, the rate of incarceration for children living in a home where there are both biological parents married is minuscule compared to the rate of incarceration of a child in a step-parent family or a single-parent household. It is clear that the best outcomes for children occur in families where both biological parents are present and married. And this is true by whopping differences. It does not matter whether there is a step-parent involved or it's a single-parent home. The best outcome for children occur in families where the biological parents are married. Children who grow up in a household with only one biological parent, even if there is a step-parent, are much worse on average regardless of the parent's race. And even yet, after all that, no matter how you slice it, you can't get a category of Americans, even a Christian category of Americans, to agree that it is very important that a child grows up in a home where both biological parents are present and there. Now, when you think of what this portends for the future, it's downright scary. The family is dying, and the family is the bedrock of society. When the family dies, society will crumble, and we are seeing that today. I don't think there's any one cause for this. It's a confluence of a number of different factors, and of course there's no agreement on exactly what those factors are. I have my own ideas about it. Other people have theirs. As a Christian minister who has studied the Bible a lot, I cannot honestly say that the Bible contains a straightforward, clear, striking defense of the traditional family. That's married man and woman with their children. But let's look at some snippets from what the Bible does say. The book of Genesis says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife." Wife, not husband. "And they shall be one flesh." The book of Proverbs says, "Rejoice with the wife of your youth." The book of Proverbs also says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord." It says, "House and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord." The book of Ecclesiastes says, "Live joyfully with the wife whom you love all the days of your life." The book of Hebrews says, "Marriage is honorable among all." The book of 1 Peter says, "Husbands, likewise, dwell with your wives with understanding, giving honor to your wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life." And interestingly, this is found in the book of Deuteronomy. "When a man has taken a wife, he shall not go out to war or be charged with any business. He shall be free at home for 1 year and bring happiness to the wife he has taken." So apparently the institution of marriage was seen as so important in Hebrew society that a newly married man was not even supposed to serve in the military for at least a year. He was supposed to be free to be with his wife. And that is an example of how important what we would call the traditional family apparently was in Hebrew society. The book of Ephesians tells fathers to bring their children up in the training and admonition of the Lord. It does not tell the public school system to bring children up in the admonition and training of the Lord, and it does not tell the church or the Sunday school department or the youth group to bring children up in the training and admonition of the Lord. It tells the fathers to do that. And that means giving counsel and advice. The book of Deuteronomy tells parents to teach their children the laws of God. It doesn't tell the Sunday school department to teach their children the laws of God. It tells the parents to do that. The Bible tells parents to be faithful to each other and to love each other. The Bible tells children to honor and respect their parents. Now remember, the Bible does not contain a list of Christian beliefs. The Bible does not line out Christian doctrine. The Bible is ancient writings, and Christian beliefs come from interpreting those writings. So we interpret the Bible in order to find Christian beliefs. And I think what's happening is that what we're seeing is the Bible is assuming that the traditional family is going to be the norm. That's married man and woman with their biological children. Now, I'm not saying the issue of single-parent families or step-parent households did not occur back in biblical times. It surely did. but it apparently did not exist to the point to where it was thought worth talking about in the Bible. You see, sometimes what the Bible does not say is just as important as what it does say, and I think this is one of those times. Think of all the times today when you hear talk of single-parent homes, where you hear discussion of children growing up in situations other than a traditional home. We hear about that a lot today. We do not hear about that in the Bible. This is an indication that it was not much of an issue back then, that it may just not have been on the radar that much. The traditional family in the Bible was seen as the norm, not the exception. Today it's the exception. We see in the Bible, both in the Old Testament and the New, numerous places where adultery is condemned. And the fact, in the Old Testament, adultery was punished by death. Now, when the Bible talks about adultery, it is talking about two people who have sex, one of whom is married to someone else. Two single people having sex is not adultery. Adultery is when two people, one of whom at least is married to someone else, has sex. And you see, this is an indication of how highly the Bible values marriage, and by extension, the traditional family. Single-parent and step-parent households were apparently not a major factor in biblical times. When it did happen, it was most likely due to death. Example is, we see much talk in the Old Testament about caring for widows and orphans. And we see talk of caring for the fatherless. But the issue of single-parent households by choice and step-parent households by choice was apparently not that much of an issue back then. What we do see alluded to in the Bible when it speaks of the family is what we would call the traditional family. Married man and woman with their biological children. Now, a lot of times people look at what they regard as the laws in the Bible and they believe they're ridiculous. And I'll admit that sometimes, especially in the Old Testament, you can look at some of those laws in there and you can think, well, gosh, I'm glad our society doesn't live by those. But you know, many of the things the Bible tells us not to do, and many of the things the Bible tells us to do, are concerned with wisdom. Many of the directions the Bible points us in are directions that are very wise. And most of the time, these things are trying to keep us out of trouble. An obvious example is murder. The Bible prohibits murder. And I don't think that's ridiculous. Would you want to live in a society where murder was accepted? The Bible condemns stealing. That's not ridiculous. You want to live in a society where stealing is okay? Where somebody can just walk into your house and get what they want and leave, and nothing you can do about it. The same thing is true of lying and deception. The Bible prohibits lying and deception. And here's something from the Bible that our society certainly has ignored. Our society is absolutely infested with lying and deception. But think for a minute, has it led to bad things? Or has it led to good things? From my perspective, all the lying and deception that we have at every level of our society, straight to the top, has led to bad. So maybe we should pay attention to the biblical injunction against lying and deception. Our society would be better off with that. Maybe the same thing is true regarding the family. Maybe what the Bible is trying to tell us is that things just don't work well unless it's a society based on the traditional family. Maybe the Bible is trying to tell us that the traditional family is the only way we're going to really get kids to turn out good. Maybe it's not necessarily that God just prefers the traditional family and we have to follow along because that's God's preference. It's like God likes Coke instead of Pepsi, so we all have to drink Coke. Maybe it's not that at all. Maybe God is trying to guide us down the road that He knows will turn out the best for us. Maybe it's just part of the way things work that children need to live in a stable home environment with both biological parents. Maybe things just don't work out well any other way. Not because God strikes us down and punishes us, but just because that's just the way things work. Now, we've talked in here before about morality. And we've seen how there's two different views about what makes something either right or wrong. One view is that God just arbitrarily decides what he likes and tells us what to do, and we have to do it. It's like God just likes Coke instead of Pepsi. He says, you drink Coke, I forbid drinking Pepsi, just because God don't like Pepsi. And if you drink a Pepsi, God will knock you down. That's how a lot of people see morality. But the other way we talked about and look at morality is that God's wisdom is deeper than ours. That God can see farther down the road than we can. And God can see the long-term consequences of things better than we can. And so he warns us about things that won't turn out well. God warns us against going down this road because he knows if we go down that road, there's something down there that's going to be bad. We can't see it, but he can. And God tells us to go down this road because he knows that what's down that road is going to turn out good. You see, when you look at the first idea where God just arbitrarily decides what morality is, we follow what God says because we're afraid he'll punish us if we don't. But in the second way, we follow God's laws not because we're afraid of punishment, but we know that God is guiding us down ways where things will turn out the best for us. We know that if we ignore God's ways and go down this way, it's not that we have to be afraid of a spanking from God. It's afraid that it's because we know there's something down there that's going to hurt us. And God told us not to go down there because he knew that was down there and we couldn't see it. You see, the Bible contains a lot of wisdom. We can either heed the wisdom of the Bible or we can ignore it. But I think we ignore it at our peril. And at our peril does not mean fear of punishment from God. At our peril means the real world consequences of going down the wrong road. The real world consequences of living in a society where less than 1/3 of adults believe it is very important that parents of children